Welcome to episode number 44 of the On the Blue Line podcast. We call this Monday Morning Roll Call, and I am your host, Wayne Mulder. This week, shine your boots, change your world. Monday Morning Roll Call starts now.
On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for their actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, the community, and the agency I
serve. So this week I want to start with a story out of Cleveland, Ohio. It's not a good story, but it is a story that has a somewhat humorous ending, even though it's a tragic event. So imagine this female, we don't know her age, but she arrives home. It's early evening, it's 5:15 p.m., but up in Cleveland, Ohio, is probably starting to get towards evening time since it is the winter. And this had happened just about a week ago on January 9th. So she pulls up in front of her home around 5:15 p.m. and she sees these four juvenile males. They're coming towards her, walking down the street. So obviously, woman by herself. She's got a child in the back seat. We will learn here in a moment. And so she's nervous, I'm sure. A little bit concerned, scared, unsure what to do. So she begins to get out of her vehicle, probably thinking she's going to run into her home to be safe. And all of a sudden, one of the subjects, who's wearing an all-black ski mask, runs up to her and pulls out a handgun. And he yells, "Give me your keys. I don't want to shoot anybody." Which is good that he doesn't want to shoot anybody, but obviously she doesn't know, do I trust him, do I not trust him, and I'm sure she's scared. But she has the wherewithal to say, hey, my child, being a mother, she's very concerned, and she says, hey, my child's in the back seat, and the male said, hey, go ahead and grab your child, which is good. Obviously, they didn't want their criminal charges to go beyond the carjacking and the stealing of this car. So she grabs her child, and then the report isn't real clear what happens. I'm sure she is, holding her child and running towards the house, scared to death. Well, two of the juveniles jump in the vehicle. And they're in the vehicle, the report says, for about a minute. So they're in there, trying to start this vehicle, whatever, to escape, because this is what they're doing. It's a carjacking. They're going to steal this car, and then they're going to take off. And they don't take off. So a minute goes by, and all of a sudden the juveniles jump out of the vehicle and they meet up with the other two. So there was a total of four, and the four of them take off towards a train station. And the victim's husband, by now, she had ran into the house, I'm sure with the little one, and said, hey, this is what just happened to me. He comes running out of the house. He chases these gentlemen down to the station, and they take off. So law enforcement is trying to locate them. Of course, the question is why did they not take the car after you're going to go through all of this and pull a weapon on somebody and threaten them and, everything that comes with that? Why would you not at least go through with taking the car, especially after sitting in it for about a minute trying to figure out how to take it? Well, the issue is that the vehicle was a manual transmission. Yes, it was a stick shift. You had to be able to put the thing in gear. You had to understand what a clutch was. You had to be able to drive the vehicle, which befuddled our would-be criminals, or our would-be car thieves who are clearly criminals. And so they got away, but hopefully law enforcement is working on looking at that video and trying to locate them. So I guess let it be a lesson. If you're going to try to steal a vehicle, you should probably be able to drive the vehicle that you are thinking of stealing. So this week, I want to talk about something very similar to some of the things we've talked about before, but the idea came to me when I was sitting in read-off. Now, I know that a lot of guys now at a lot of agencies, ours included, are starting to wear these tennis shoe style boots. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're wearing the tennis shoe style boots, you're probably going to start off with what I'm saying as in, well, this really doesn't matter anymore. But that's not the point. It really has absolutely nothing to do with boots. But when I first started, when you'd come into read off, there's always that one person, at least one. And when you see them, their boots are perfectly shined, almost to a mirror finish. And you're like, wow, this guy really pays attention to that. And usually the same guy who has his boots shine like that is the same one that's going to have a shirt stay in. That shirt is going to be nice and fitted. It's going to fit them correctly. These little details, when you see them, when you see that person, what's your opinion of them? What comes to mind? When you see them on a scene, what do you think? Do they appear like they're in control? Here's the thing, even if they're not, even if there's somebody that doesn't lead very well, even if there's somebody who isn't in control, they have an appearance of someone who's in control. They have an appearance of someone who has it all together. So when it comes to shining your boots and pressing your uniform, what does all this mean? Well, it's attention to detail. And why does attention to detail matter? Well, there's a few reasons, and I just want to touch on them real quick. So first of all, in this profession, it could keep you alive. It's something important to be considered when we talk about officer safety. There was an article in Law Enforcement Today with Lieutenant David Crisler Jr., and he talks in the article, and this is a quote, that I've had a few friends that have been injured because they did not pay attention to the little things around them. From interviewing the 60-year-old with his hands in a fist to a car occupied by several subjects and only focusing on the driver, while backup is several minutes away. And he goes on through the article talking about different scenarios, different situations where he could have, or where these people that he knew needed to pay attention to detail. And by not paying attention to detail, something bad happened. He ends the article with talking about the well-known statement, don't sweat the small stuff. He ends by saying, unlike that saying, we should sweat the small stuff in our line of work. It is preached to us during the academy and at in-service that we should always be aware of the little details that can cause a troubling situation. And then he goes on to say, but many of us forget these lessons at the classroom door, or sometimes we get in a hurry and cut corners so we can be done with something that seems at the time like a mundane task. The problem is that nothing is mundane and nothing is too small for us to consider when performing our duties. So, when I was researching this concept, when I was looking this up, I just did a generic keyword search for attention to detail military. And what comes up? Army jump masters, doing checks before a jump. Pages and pages of checklists come up. Why is that? It's because details do matter, and in certain lines of work, it can actually be the difference between life and death. That's why pilots use checklists and other high liability careers. But, this issue with attention to detail is not always just a matter of life and death. Sometimes it's the difference between success and failure. So the second concept that I want to talk to you about this week is how it denotes professionalism. Businesses use checklists. In fact, while I was searching for this, I found an article about the importance of detail, even in concerts. The writer references the 1980s rock band Van Halen, and they talk about the well-known portion of their contract where they said every concert venue must have M&M candy in the dressing room, but it stipulated no brown M&Ms. So when people hear something like this, typically they think it's just traditional rock star BS. This is just them acting like a bunch of children saying, I want it this way or I want it that way. However, in an article with lead singer David Lee Roth, he talks about attention to detail and why they would ask this. He's quoted as saying, Roth said Van Halen has a large and complicated stage show in the 1980s, one that demanded the attention of promoters and the people moving the band's equipment. To ensure those responsible for staging their concerts had thoroughly read about the many technical needs, band members inserted the M&M reference in their contracts as a test. If the candy wasn't right, they had the reason to be concerned about similar inattention to serious issues like electricity and load stress. See, professionals look like professionals. They act like professionals. In recent time, there's been this huge shift towards relaxed standards, but it does not negate the fact that attention to details matter. Shined shoes matter, groomed hair, pressed clothing. These details, whether they're true or not, speak to something about the person. At least for this moment, whether it's trying to get a job or sell an item or anything else, you look like someone who can do the task at hand. You look like someone who has attention to detail. The same thing when they read these contracts. They had to believe that someone who noticed the no brown M&Ms would be the same one that would notice a problem with the concert equipment. So the third thing and last thing that I want to mention is how the act is a habit. This is similar to the concept that U.S. Navy Admiral William McRaven gives in his speech, if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. When he starts that speech, he talks about reasons why if you want to change the world, you should start with making your bed. Because first of all, the accomplishment of the first task of the day, it gives you a sense of pride and encourages you to keep completing tasks throughout your day. He then goes on to say that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you're going to have trouble doing the big things right. So this concentration on the details, the minutia, allows you to do bigger and bigger things later on. And lastly, if you have a miserable day, you come home to a made bed. And what does that mean? It reminds you that tomorrow's a new day and that tomorrow you can do even better than today. So the act becomes a habit, just like we spoke about a few weeks ago in the podcast where we talked about the power of habit. But it starts with attention to detail. See, we have to see the little task, then complete the little task. The small wins lead to bigger and bigger wins until eventually we look back and see the great number of small battles that we've won time and time again. See, that's what gives us strength going forward. Something happens, as the Admiral pointed out. When we see small successes, they beget further successes, and we stay in the battle. So this week, I encourage you to take a moment and consider areas of your life where you have not shown attention to detail. What small wins can you and I start concentrating on? What areas of work, at business, at home, what areas can we show greater attention to detail? As we so often talk about, start small. Make your bed, shine your boots, and then change your world. That does it for this week's Monday Morning Roll Call. I hope to see you next Monday at Roll Call, and in the meantime, I will see you on the Blue Line. If this is your first time listening or for current information on what is happening, I encourage you to go to our website, ontheblueline.com. Again, ontheblueline.com. On there, you're going to find various links to our podcast, news about what's coming up, and links to our closed Facebook group. This podcast is available anywhere and everywhere that you prefer to stream your podcast, including Apple and Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thank you so much for joining us as we strive to make a difference in the personal lives of all those who serve. Have a great week.